Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I am so excited to have you here today, to be here today, to speak with you about planning your breakthrough 2025. This is just such a great opportunity for us to get together and an opportunity for you to reflect on the year that you've had and the year that you want to create for yourself. And I am so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And I can see that there are people joining in our Zoom room live, so welcome. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here with me in the moment today. And I also wanted to extend a big welcome to everyone who will watch the recording of this webinar. Thank you for watching the recording. Thank you for participating. If you're watching the recording, I would encourage you to treat this like a workshop as we are in the moment. So have your pen and paper handy. Be prepared to answer the questions that we're going to be talking about today, because these are the questions that will help set you up for success in the new year. So I will introduce myself in a moment, but first I wanted to just give you a sense of whether you are in the right place. And here are some indications that this session is something that will really benefit you. So today's session is for you if you know that you want 2025 to be a breakthrough year. And I will talk more about what we mean by a breakthrough year. And you want to feel re-energized and more in control of your practice. One of the best things about setting goals for the new year is that it allows us to be intentional. It allows you to regain some of the control and momentum over your practice. Often, when I work with lawyers, they come to me because they feel stuck, they're stagnating, they've hit a plateau, they're at a fork in the road. And what this type of planning does is helps you course correct, right? It helps you be strategic in the direction that you're taking. And that will help you over time to avoid those stuck plateaus. It also can feel re-energizing, right? When you're in the zone of reacting to what's going on around you and you take that step away and then you pause and you get to plan intentionally, you feel like you have a lot more control over your days. Um, this is for you if you want clear goals to work toward and a plan to get there. So today is all about brainstorming. We're going to help you figure out what you want in the new year, and I'm going to teach you a tool to make that happen for you. You want someone else to lead you through the planning process. So I am a coach and I love working with coaches because I love to have someone help me figure out the questions or the format or the framework that I can use to get to where I want to go. So ultimately, it's about you. It's your goals, it's your decisions, it's your practice. You are the expert in your own career, your own life. And I am here to help guide you by offering questions, by offering ideas, and helping you think in different ways in a way that may be different from if you were to do this on your own. This is for you if you strive for excellence for yourself and everything you do, and you want to challenge the current limits of your potential. This is where I find so many of my clients are at. You are high achieving, you have high standards for yourself, for others, for the work that you do. You have very ambitious goals for your practice, for your life. You want to live a full life. And so the coaching that we do isn't about taking you from a place where you're not succeeding. To the contrary, very often you are succeeding. And what I can help you do is to help expand into that potential, right? I think we all have this capacity for greatness, for excellence, to be living in alignment with our gifts and our values and our strengths. And I help you do that so that you can see what your potential is, so you can keep pushing and working at the edges of your potential. That growth is really exciting. So if that appeals to you, 100%, you're in the right place. You know you need a different approach. So we'll talk more about this, but sometimes the idea of doing more of the same just isn't going to get us to where we want to be. And then finally, you want to help break the habit of the status quo. So again, just going back to this idea of intentional planning, not falling into a rut, really taking control and steering the direction of your career. That's what we're here today to do. Now, if I am new to you, welcome and thank you for joining today. My name is Paula Price, and I am a professional certified coach with the International Coaching Federation. And for 12, 13 years before becoming a coach, I was a practicing lawyer, primarily here in Vancouver, BC. I practiced at a large national firm in the commercial litigation department, and so I know firsthand what it's like to be a lawyer. I articled, I summered at a large firm. I have the experience of working in different sizes of firms. Most of it was in a large national firm, but I understand what goes on. I understand the pressures involved. I understand the opportunities. I understand the types of clients that you work with, the types of lawyers that you work with. And I think that's important because I know when I was practicing as a lawyer and I would reach out for help, whether it was coaching type of help, mentoring, um, guidance in terms of how to do things, career planning, it always really helped if the person that I worked with understood where I was coming from, or I didn't have to explain things, and where they offered suggestions that were doable within my practice, right? I can remember having conversations about boundaries and time management and just feeling that the people that I was speaking with didn't really understand where I was coming from. So I want you to have that experience working with me, that I get it and I'm here for you. And I know how to help lawyers. I've been working with lawyers as a coach for about 6 or 7 years now. I took my schooling in 2017 and I kind of opened my doors in 2018. And I've worked with lawyers at all stages, law students who are looking to get a job at a law firm, students who have been hired into law firms and now they're looking to transition from student to lawyer. I've worked with junior associates who are just starting out, cultivating their practice, or senior associates who are moving into leadership roles, leaders who are expanding their roles within the firm, lawyers who've decided to move into in-house positions and what that looks like at various stages, including more of a leadership role there. And of course, lawyers who have started their own firms, who have joined smaller firms and have more of an entrepreneurial bent to their practice. And so I feel very honored because I've had the privilege now of working with a broad scope of lawyers and really understanding the different opportunities and challenges that come along with these different types of practice. And the common thread throughout is that I am here to support you. I'm here to help you realize your goals as a practitioner. And I'm thrilled to have you here today because we're going to talk about your year, the one that we're just wrapping up now, and we're going to plan for something great in 2025. So thank you so much for joining me. Today we have an agenda, and I'm going to be efficient with our time. I know your time is precious, and I appreciate you spending it with me. And so I want to make sure that we're using the time effectively. What we're going to do is we're going to start by defining your breakthrough year. Then and that really will get us set for the course of today's discussion, right? We kind of know where we're going. Then we're going to take stock of 2024. So before we go anywhere, I love for us to evaluate where we are right now. So we'll look at your wins. We will look at lessons learned. I call it wisdom on this slide. We'll talk about your wants, what you want for next year. We will talk about your blueprint for 2025. This will be narrowing down the goals, the objectives you have for the new year. Then we're going to narrow your focus down to one single goal. Doesn't mean that's the only goal you can have for the year, but it's the one that we're going to then workshop. We're going to create a great goal. It's a framework that I use when I help my clients with goal setting, and it's how I set my own goals. And then finally, I'm going to share a few words about a group coaching and mastermind program that I offer for women lawyers. It is a fabulous 6-month container, and it is something that I've been offering for the past 2 years. I just wrapped up with the current cohort, now past cohort. We've been working together for 6 months, and it is just an incredible program. So I'm going to share a little bit more about that with you, because if you are interested in working with me in that capacity, I would love for you to join me and a group of up to 8 women lawyers for the next 6 months, where we can really help you with the goals that you set and bring to life some of the ideas that you come up with in today's webinar. And I will say that one of the most amazing things about this particular time of year is that for so many of us, it is a wrap up period, right? We're reflecting on the past year and we have our eyes on the next year. And so there's a lot of natural momentum that comes around this time of year. And it feels like such a privilege that I get to spend this time with you and that you are dreaming and scheming and coming up with ideas that you're going to bring into fruition in 2025. So I think that is absolutely magic. And I'm so excited for you and for the takeaways that you're going to have during today's session. Now, we will have a bit of time at the end for questions and takeaways. I find in these virtual rooms that they tend to be quiet. And so I 100% encourage participation, and I would love to see your comments. I have the chat open, and so feel free to use the chat to communicate with me. You're welcome to communicate with our entire group if you would like to do that. But I appreciate that for some of you, this is something that you'd rather keep to yourself. And so there's no right or wrong way to do this. But if you do participate, please do so in the chat. Let me know if you have questions. Feel free to share what you're finding along the way. And I will share that with the group. I won't read out names because I know some people, again, like to remain anonymous, but I'd love to hear from you. So that's pretty much our instruction and our agenda for the day. The only other thing that I'll mention is that I find it really useful to have a pen and paper handy because you'll want to take notes of your own thoughts and ideas. I will share a copy of the slides with you, and so you'll have the questions and the themes, and you can refer back to them. And if you're listening to the recording, you can always pause the recording and take extra time if you need it. That's one of the advantages of watching the recording. And if you're here live, you could always do that too, right? Go back to the recording if you would find that helpful. So I promised that we would start by defining what a breakthrough year can be. Now, you may listen to my podcast. If you don't, I have a podcast. It's called The Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers. And over the past few weeks, I have been talking about the new year. I've been talking about leadership in the new year. And I've been talking about breakthrough years. This is something that speaks very strongly to me at the moment. I feel like I am setting myself up for a breakthrough year in 2025. And I feel like it is something that is in the air, that others around me, the lawyers that I've been speaking with and working with, I feel like you are poised for a breakthrough year. Now, breakthrough, by definition, according to the Oxford Languages Online Dictionary, is an important development that removes an obstacle to progress. And what I take from this definition, and when I think about breakthrough, and when you think about breakthrough, I see there as being two parts. The first part of the breakthrough is the achievement. So here today, we're talking about goals, right? There's this thing that you want, it's out there, you don't have it yet, and it will take something for you to achieve it. So that's the achievement component of a breakthrough year. But there's this second element, right? This is where the breaking through happens, right? This obstacle, removing the obstacle. And to me, that's almost more interesting than the achievement of the goal itself, because that obstacle, that breakthrough is where you get to experience the transformation of being the person who couldn't and becoming the person who could. And so, what I'd love for you to consider as we go through today's webinar, as you're planning for your year, is to think about where in your practice, and it might be outside of your practice too, but where are there these limits that need to be broken through? I mean, they don't need to be broken through, but that you would like to break through because you want to experience what it's like on the other side. And I feel like you would be poised for this, particularly if you've reached that plateau state, right? Where you kind of feel like you've done a lot of work, you've been really busy, you've kind of been just going along with things. And now there's this moment of stillness. And you get to reflect on where you're going next and what that next level is going to involve. So I appreciate that for each of you who has joined me here today, you're already starting at a very elevated position. When we think of breakthroughs, sometimes we think about those classic stories of people who went from rags to riches, right? I love the story of Sylvester Stallone when he was producing the original Rocky. And it's a tale of living in his car and having to sell his dog, and things are really terrible until he finally had his break in Hollywood, and then everything was magic after that. And so I don't expect that breakthrough for you or for me is going to be we're going to stop living in our car and do something different. It's more that we already have reached a certain level of success, and the breakthrough is more subtle potentially, right? It's in how you do things. And so what a breakthrough is not is it's not necessarily this rah, super showy thing that everybody else is going to recognize. And in fact, it can be a really subtle shift where you're in the same job, you're working with the same people, but your experience of it is completely different. Um, a breakthrough is not doing more of the same. It's not pressing the gas pedal harder in order to go faster, realizing that you're stuck in a certain gear. It's actually shifting gears and going to that next level. It's not staying in your comfort zone because you know that you can predict the outcome if you keep doing what you're doing. It's pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and doing something differently. A breakthrough is not an excuse to get frustrated with yourself if you're trying, you're experimenting, and you're not seeing the results right away. Um, I think a good example for me is when I see other people's children, right? I don't notice my own kids growing because I see them every day. But when I see other children, yesterday my kids had a holiday recital, and I saw kids in my son's grade 7 class who look like men, who I remember being these little tiny humans when I first met them, back when they were kindergartners. So we don't see the change in ourselves the same way that others might see it because they only witness every few years or at further spaced out parts. And so we don't want you to feel like your breakthrough has to be instantaneous, right? This is something that can happen over time. And there's this lovely quote. I drink tea that has these charming words of wisdom attached to them. And yesterday's quote I thought was quite appropriate for today's lesson. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. And so what I love about this is that we can design a breakthrough and it doesn't have to be instantaneous. It's something that can happen over the course of time. And then finally, a breakthrough isn't more information. It's not gathering and learning more. I think as lawyers in particular, we're really good at research. We're really good at finding out all the different angles. We're really good at learning. With AI, we now have access to even more research, even faster. And so I don't see any of you as having an information problem. I see us collectively as having the information. And the trick here, what's going to make this year different from others, is to be able to act on strategic information. So, what is the breakthrough then? It is a profound shift in mindset that can change how you think, feel, and act, right? So, for example, if currently you think that opposing counsel should never pick apart your argument or um, be difficult on the other side of a file, right? If that's your mindset and you were able to shift that mindset into, well, of course, opposing counsel should do this. It's their job to do this. I welcome this. That would be an example of a shift that would probably have a pretty big impact on your practice. A breakthrough is something that goes to the core of who you are. So again, looking at the challenge that you'll need to overcome in order to achieve your goal, right? We can shift from the do, have, be model, right? You need to do the thing to have the result to be successful. For example, we're going to flip that around. Be, do, have. So you start by being that person who is successful. That will result in you doing things that will lead to that greater success. And then finally, you'll have the result that you seek. A breakthrough is continuing to work towards your goal, even in the face of impatience, distraction, failure, self-doubt, criticism, judgment, ridicule, all the challenges that will stand between you and your goal. And what this means is that you won't just achieve your goal, but you'll also become the person who has achieved that goal. That means that you will have developed the strength to achieve it. So you can imagine if your goal is partnership and there's a rigorous process for you to get there, that's an excellent thing because that process, the strength that you build, the skills that you build along the way are going to come in very handy when you reach that next level. So you've now made partner, and there's going to be a whole new invitation of challenges and opportunities. And because of the steps and challenges you've gone through to get there, you're prepared to be that person. So this is what a breakthrough year is for our purposes. Um, Today, we want to start with the end in mind. So, as I've been speaking, I hope that you've been thinking about what this means for you. And I would love for you to write on your piece of paper what a breakthrough year would mean for you. Now, another way of looking at this is to tell yourself, right? Or what I'd love for you to have by the end of the hour is 2025 will be the year that you, and then you fill in the blank. What is it this year that you will do? I know one of my breakthrough promises to myself, 2025 will be the year that I have more fun, right? This year was a particularly challenging year for a number of reasons. I want to have more fun in my practice and outside of my practice. So you might have something like that as well. There are other breakthrough wishes or intentions, goals that I'm setting, but that's an example of what it might look like. So we're going to move on and take stock of 2024. And here, what I am going to invite you to do is go through your wins, your lessons learned, and then finally what you want for next year. So we are going to start with wins. And I'm going to invite you to think about 2024. So here we are in December. It might help you if you revert back to where you were this time last year. And I can't see who is on the webinar right now, but if you were here last year at the same webinar, you might even reflect back on what that experience was like for you. I did a similar webinar, not exactly the same, but taking stock and looking ahead. So if you were planning your year around this time last year, what's different, right? What went right? So here are some of the prompts that I would offer to you in terms of really taking inventory and write everything down, right? Don't edit yourself, don't limit yourself. The idea here is to celebrate your year, right? We don't spend enough time celebrating our wins. So write them all down and feel free to share any of them in the chat. I love to see your wins. So goals that you achieved, right? Practice goals. Maybe you were promoted to partner. Maybe you were promoted to practice group leader. Maybe you started your own firm. Maybe you changed jobs. Maybe you moved in house. Maybe you moved back to your old firm. I mean, there's all sorts of things that could have happened. So you might think of goals achieved. You might think of transitions, practice skills developed. So what skills did you really develop over the course of the year? If you're a litigator, you might have taken on more complex cases. You might have run trials. You might have taken on new clients. You might have shifted your practice area and developed new skills there. If you're a solicitor, you may have run more complex deals. You might have taken the lead in some big negotiations. You may be developing new practice areas. So think about the skills, right? The level of communication that you have with your clients, the way that you're able to synthesize information. So what are the practice skills that you have gained over the course of the year? This next category, networking and new relationships. So if you think about where you were this time last year and where you are now, right? Chances are you've got new people in your life. I know if I look back on the year, there are some pivotal conversations that I had with people where I feel like I really fostered a relationship with people who aren't in my immediate network. And so you might think of those people for you, mentors that maybe you've met, lawyers maybe that you're mentoring. So what are some of the relationships that you've built over the course of the year? Leadership and growth. If you are in that emerging leader or leader position and you're building a team, you might have some really great wins there, right? I mean, this could be you taking on authority, you delegating more frequently, you learning to provide feedback effectively, you creating the vision for your group, for your team, you having uncomfortable conversations, making decisions. What does that look like for you? Leadership and growth. Practice management. This is one of my personal favorites. What are you doing in your practice that you're proud of? How are you creating efficiencies? How are you using your time? Are you finding new ways to schedule your days, your weeks, so that you're getting things done and feeling more confident about that? Are you saying no, right? Are you using your calendar in a way to not say yes to everything in order to prioritize the things that matter most? F, what are you most proud of, right? Now, this is a really fabulous question. What are you most proud of this year? And it doesn't have to be related to work, but when you think back on the year, what is something that you feel really good about? And I'll share a personal example. When I picked my year, the word last year, it was grace because I knew that it was going to be a challenging year, and it was. And so, one of the things that I'm really proud of is that when I look at where we are this year, and we being sort of a collective, the people that are really close to me in my personal life, we are so much better than we were this time last year. And I feel very proud of that, even more so than professionally, although professionally, I also feel really proud. But that to me is what is resonating this year. And so you get to choose for yourself, what is it that you're most proud of? And then finally, what you didn't see coming. And this is always fun because whenever you look back on your year, you'll notice there were these opportunities that you never really could have predicted. And yet they came to you for a reason, right? There's something that you've done. There's something that you have demonstrated to the world that makes them think that you are the perfect person for a particular job. And so that's always a super fun category, is what didn't you see coming that you now have experienced? Now, this brings us to the wisdom. And this is also very important. Um, we need to celebrate our wins. And oh, I love this. I have a comment here. Didn't see moving in house. Brilliant. This is the kind of example, right? There must have been things that you were doing that created this opportunity. And yet it was, as you described, you didn't see it coming. So this is fantastic. Um, wisdom. So what you learned. So every time we reach the end of anything, we can do this type of evaluation. What worked, what didn't work, what would we do differently next time? So I'm inviting you to look at 2024, and without feeling like you failed or um, whatever negative self-talk might come along with an analysis like this, I would like you to simply objectively identify some of the things that didn't work this year, right? Goals that didn't come to fruition. I have these goals that didn't come to fruition, but there are items on my to-do list that are not getting done. It's kind of annoying, but that might be on your list. Okay, what isn't getting done? Problems that didn't get resolved. There may be relationships, there may be work flow issues, there may be challenging clients or structural issues, things that aren't getting resolved. There could be losses for lawyers who are working in an adversarial context. You may have had some tough losses, right? And that probably really felt difficult in the moment. And so that might be something where you learned a lot of wisdom. I had a lawyer I used to work with who used to call it sitting on blisters, which is such it's not the prettiest mental image, but it drives the point home, right? What mistakes maybe were there that you've now learned from. Um, and then missed opportunities. I think sometimes we miss out on opportunities, and that can feel like a loss. And what can we do differently next time? So here I'd just like you to note what those are for you. Um, because those are learning opportunities, right? What are the things that didn't really work out? And what are the lessons that we can draw from that? And we have 60 minutes together, and I wish we had more time, right? What I would invite you to do is to treat some of what you come up with today as seeds that you can develop, right? These are seeds of ideas that you can reflect on after today's webinar wraps up. So I'm going to invite you to do that when it comes to the lessons learned, right? If there are things that were difficult last year, I would invite you to record them and to pull the lessons from those experiences to see what will be different next year, right? What will you apply going forward? And then that brings us to wants. What is on your wish list for 2025? So it might be a transition at work, right? A new position within your organization, or you might be wanting a transition from A to B. It could be income goals, right? You may have billable targets that translate into revenue goals. You might have clients that you want to acquire. You may have your own practice and you're setting up your targets for the year. It could be leadership. You may be advancing, being promoted. You might be building your team, business development. So you might be aiming to have more, develop your relationships with potential clients, with other lawyers within the community. Practice management, you might be trying to get control over your time. Personal management, you might be looking at more of the personal health, right? Greater confidence. You might be more engagement with work, um, feeling like you're more fulfilled. Those are all areas of personal management. And then goals outside of work, right? Your health, fun, time with friends and family. And it might even mean if you have a significant number of responsibilities at home, it might be reallocating the division of labor to free you up so that you have capacity for other things. So I'm going to invite you to list out as many wants as you possibly can, right? This is a wish list. Don't limit yourself. I think sometimes, again, we self-edit. We want to think realistically. We don't want to put things down that we don't think are achievable. But I would encourage you to put all of it down because this is such a great opportunity for you to brainstorm. You're here, you are spending the time. And so let's make the most of your time and just get that list out. And again, you might be surprised at what you come up with today. And who knows where these ideas that you have in this webinar, where they will lead you in the future. So we're going to keep moving to the next slide. Now, the blueprint here is to look at the list that you've just created and identify 3 to 5 goals for 2025. Now, in today's workshop, we're going to focus on one. So it will be one of those 3 to 5 goals. The reason I'm asking you to do this is because when it comes to planning, when it comes to planning a year, for example, you can start by having this broad collection of ideas. And that is a very useful exercise because you may come up with ideas that you didn't even know you had. And they may not be 2025 goals, they might be 2026 or 2027 goals, but it's nice to see that they're there, right? That gives you some information about yourself. And then when you're forced to take that list and reduce it, then you need to prioritize. And by putting things against each other, you start to see what really matters, right? You start to see where you have a lot of agency and choice in the goals that you select as priority goals for next year. So I am going to assume that you have now selected 3 to 5 goals. And from that list, we're now going to move to one goal. And I've put one of my favorite images on this slide. It is from Greg McKeown's Essentialism. And the idea here is that if we are out spending our energy, right? He's got this nice diagram, energy with spokes going out in multiple directions. You can see how you don't really get very far on any one in particular. Whereas if you take that same energy and you focus it in one direction, you're going to get so much further. Now, my guess is that for each of you, the idea of narrowing down to a single thing is not realistic, right? Your practices, your lives are too busy. There are way too many things going on. But I would invite you to keep this image in mind to be more selective about where it is that you're focusing your energy, because you might find that when you look at your practice, when you look outside your practice using that lens, you are able to see where you would be better off placing your energy versus where you would be better off letting some things go. And when it comes to breakthroughs, I think one of the themes, at least for myself this year, is letting things go, right? It's freeing up the space. It's saying goodbye to projects where they're interesting, but they're not the core projects, letting those move to the side in order to focus and go deeper on those things that really, really matter. Another thing that I will share, and if you joined me the other week for the discussion I did on leadership for women lawyers, I talked about how much of leadership is there is an element, of course, of learning new skills and strategies, but there's also this element of letting things go and being more of who you are. So I would invite you to think about how the goal that you're going to pick is going to help you be more of who you are. So actually, let me just go back to that slide for a minute. If you want some ideas for how to pick a single goal, some of the questions that you might ask yourself are, is this a goal that keeps coming back, right? The new year is such a great time for that. It's almost like Groundhog Day. You might see year to year, every December, January, you put the same thing on your wish list and it doesn't happen. So either that's a sign that this is just not a goal that is important to you, or it's a sign that we need to do things differently. You might look at your list and say, okay, what would have the greatest impact on me, right? It might be something that's causing you a lot of stress. in which case relieving that stress would make a big difference. Or it might be something that you are really excited about, in which case making that a priority goal would be highly energizing. You would just love to pursue it. You might also think about, is there an umbrella goal? Sometimes there's a goal that encapsulates a number of other goals. And so is there a goal there that would really solve for other goals as well? And then finally, is there a goal there that would stretch you the most, right? And so if we're thinking about breakthrough years and goals that would stretch you, that might be something to think about. So I'm going to assume that everybody has selected a goal. Again, you are more than welcome to put it in the chat, and I would love to see your goals. But I also respect that not everybody wants to share. So we're going to move into the great goal formula. Now, if you have worked with me before or you have listened to my podcast, I've talked about this before. And there's an episode, I think it's episode 6 from the very beginning of my podcast series, where I break down this framework and discuss it. And so if you want to go deeper on this, I recommend listening to that podcast episode and then having your goal in mind as you do that. What we're going to do here is run you through this framework, because what it will help you do, is start to get really clear about how you're going to make your goal come to fruition. And we want to start by looking at what your goal is and making it specific and measurable. Now, that language, oh, I love this. Okay, we have a goal here, bringing in at least one of my own clients in each of the areas that I want to be focusing my practice. So this is beautiful, beautiful, because number one, I love your goal. And number two, I love that it's very specific and measurable, right? So we know that you have a certain number of practice areas and you want to bring in at least one client in each of those areas. So now we know what the goal is. It's specific and measurable. Love it. Goals that you might think about. So for example, it might be submitting your partnership application if you're at a firm. It might be changing jobs, starting your firm. It might be, I love this, a business development goal, great example, billing goals. It might also be a goal that's harder to measure, right? So a lot of lawyers that I work with want better time management, better practice management, and that can be hard to measure. And so we want to find ways for you to do that. I recommend having a scale, right? Rating yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, or finding sort of KPI, key performance indicators that will tell you that you're on track. This is also really helpful if it's confidence, right? If you're looking to build your confidence, okay, we love the goal, but what does that mean for you in detail? How will you know that you have achieved that goal? I have worked, as I mentioned, with a number of groups of women lawyers where we've all gone through this exercise together, right? They've all set their goals. And so they've had some really incredible goals, right? Where, for example, it's wanting to shift the balance of their practice. And so the practice goal was, okay, let's go from, 50-50 managing and executing the work to 25% doing the work, 75% executing. Or if there's a business development goal, this might be applicable to you, to say, okay, I want a certain percentage of my practice, the time that I spend at work, to be devoted to pursuing my business development goals. So there are a number of different ways that you can set a goal. And so my invitation here to you is to say, how will you know that you have reached your goal? How can you make it specific and measurable? So that brings us to the next one, which is the reason. So the reason is, what is important about this goal for you? And I would invite you to ask yourself this question multiple times, right? Because chances are, if you ask just once, you may not yield an answer from yourself that is ultra compelling. So for example, I'll almost always do a great goal before I do a speaking presentation. And I did one here today. And I did a reason. And the reason that I'm doing this session today, the surface reason is, well, I set it up. Here we are. It would be rude not to show up. Sure, those are some reasons. I want to do it. But what is the true compelling reason for me? Well, the reason I wrote, I'm just looking at my goal, because everyone deserves to know themselves, who they are, and what they're capable of. So my invitation for each of you, that's why I'm here, is because I want to encourage you to ask yourselves those questions that are really big questions, like what are you capable of? What is going to be a breakthrough year for you? So that is a reason. And so you might think about what reason you have for your goal, right? And typically it'll go to a core value, right? Um, in my case, the core value is I believe in helping people reach their potential, right? I believe in learning and growth and reaching beyond what's comfortable to what's next. Other reasons, other values, it might be, it aligns with your long-term goals, it serves a purpose. It's for your growth, it's for your excellence, it's for contributing to the greater community. You want to create sustainability in your practice. You want, you feel a sense of purpose through your work. So that energy, that reason is what is going to compel you to move forward with your goal, even when your goal gets really hard. And chances are, if you've picked a goal that's really ambitious, you're going to have some struggles along the way. And so it helps if you can dig deep back to this reason and say, well, now I understand why I'm doing it. The next category is energy. And you can use energy, you can use emotion. I tend not to use emotion because I find with lawyers, we don't always want to talk about our emotions. We want to talk about the facts, right? Here's the facts, here's the law, here's how things are going to go. But when you can bring your energy and your emotion to a goal, it is fueled then by you, right? It serves as a fuel source. So when you think about your goal, how do you want to feel in the execution of it? Do you want to feel committed? Do you want to feel courageous? Do you want to feel confident, grounded, purposeful, determined? These are all energies that I think are sustainable and can really yield the result that you're looking for. I think sometimes we want our goals to feel really exciting and you want to feel passionate about your goal. And by all means, I love that for you. I love that to be an ingredient. And I would also invite you to think about what other emotions you want to bring, because sometimes, even for the goals that we think we want the most, it's hard to muster up that level of excitement, especially when it comes to doing some of the tedious work involved. So, for example, if I'm thinking about generating clients and what that means, well, that probably means thinking about who that's going to be. It might mean sending some emails to people that you don't know. That could be uncomfortable. It might be going out to networking events where, this is me in the evenings when I have to go to a networking event in an evening. It's hard. It's hard for me because, the kids are at home. I have to find someone to look after them. I have to get dressed, leave the house, etc. And I always kind of struggle in that moment. And yet the goal being to go and meet with people and connect with people and form potentially new connections. That is what compels, overcoming the inertia of not wanting to do it. So for you, what energy do you want to bring to your goal? Action. So this is really where you start to break your goal down into items, right? What do you actually need to do? So the steps required to reach your goal. I just listed out a few steps for the example of business development, but here you want to go piece by piece, right? So if your goal, for example, I was thinking about one of my goals, which is to have more fun. And I was thinking, okay, well, what would that even mean? Well, I would probably need to identify what fun would look like. What does fun look like for a 47-year-old woman with 2 kids and a husband and a coaching practice? So, what is fun, right? Does that mean scheduling more activities with my friends? Does it mean trying a new sport? Does it mean learning a new language? Does it mean time that I spend vegging? You want to define it and then figure out ways to make it happen. So for you, what are the items that you need to do? And again, we have our hour together, but I highly encourage you to take the time after today to develop your items, to develop your action plan, because those action steps are what are going to bridge you between where you are now and where you want to be. So the next one is time, and time can be looked at in a number of different ways. First of all, I would encourage you to put a time limit on your goal. So it may be that this is a goal that you're looking at throughout the course of 2025, in which case, make that your end goal. By December 31st, 2025, this goal will be accomplished. Now, it may be that you're thinking of a goal that will take less time. So you might want a shorter timeline. But what I'd invite you to do here is to put a container on it, because once there's a container, it's a lot easier for you to do that backwards planning, right? The steps that you take will result in the goal. You can now work backwards. Now, you're also going to want to think about how long it's going to take. Now, time estimates are really challenging for a lot of us, right? As a lawyer, I used to struggle to come up with time estimates for research and budgeting and all that. And I know that I'm not alone, because clients that I work with now also struggle with that. They talk about how they sit down to work, and it's really hard to estimate how long it's going to take to draft the argument, the contract, to do the different tasks on a job. And so it's hard to estimate how much time something is going to take, but I'd invite you to give yourself some sort of an estimate. Even if it's wrong, it's better than nothing. And what it will do is it will force you to account for the fact that that time now needs to go into your calendar, which is when, right? When will you do the things that are required to create the goal? And one of my favorite conversations of 2024 was one that I had with a client who was talking about a goal that was not a particularly urgent goal. It was a goal that she would be happy if it happened sometime in the next year. And so I asked her, like, when do you plan to do the things that you need to do to reach the goal? And she said, and I love her response because it's very honest and it's what most people want, frankly, which is, well, I don't really want to spend any of my working day doing it because I'm already busy. And, when I go home, well, I'm busy there too, because, I've got a family to look after. And then I, basically just go to sleep. So really, this goal is going to have to happen kind of in the outer hours, of which there are none, right? And so I kind of suggested to her, and it was a very friendly conversation, but that if this goal was going to move forward, we needed to find a way to bring it into the day. So a way of thinking about this is that you've got 100% bandwidth that constitutes your usable time in a day. And right now, if 100% of your time is being used up by work and non-work activities, if you have a goal, it's not currently something that you're working toward, we need to find somewhere on that 100% band to put this. And so for you, it's thinking about, where is this going to go? Where is this project going to go? Because we all love the idea of it happening if we do it in the after hours. But if we do it in the after hours, the chances of it getting done are very, very slim. So time, when will you work on your goal? And then finally, exclamation. So in the early days of the Great Goal, exclamation was a pure wild card. What else is there that we haven't covered? Often it would be more reasons about why this goal is important and compelling. Now I've decided that the exclamation point is really obstacles, right? What are the things that are barriers between you and the goal that you have? Now, it could be other things. Don't shy away from other factors that I haven't listed on this framework. But so important are the obstacles that stand between you and your goal, and how you're going to go about achieving or overcoming them. And your obstacles are very important clues. They tell you a lot about yourself. And I'm so glad that you're here with me today. One of the things that I was thinking about as I was preparing for today is that this session really is about you getting to know yourself better, you answering these questions and learning more about you, your goals, what is challenging, what you're excited about. And all of that information is useful for you because it will help inform the decisions that you make going forward. So thank you, and just acknowledging each of you for being here and for doing this work. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a program that I am offering, and it is a 6-month coaching program. It is for women lawyers, and I've mentioned I've had 4 sessions that I've run, each of which had 8 women enrolled in the program. And I find that this is a really wonderful container in which women lawyers can come together and pursue their goals. The program is 6 months, and we start by creating a goal, right? And much like you have just done, we go through the elements of the Great Goal and create a goal that can be worked on over the course of our time together. There are 2 individual coaching sessions in the program because I love to have the opportunity to have a one-on-one discussion with each of the women in the group. And we usually do that at the beginning and at the end of the program. Can help set you up for your goal and address any questions that you wouldn't necessarily want to share with the group. And then every month we meet twice, right? We meet once on the the second Wednesday of the month, and we meet again on the fourth Wednesday of the month. And on the first Wednesday, we have a lesson, and there are 6 topics. We talk about goal setting. In February, we talk about self-concept. So this is who you need to become to achieve your goal, right? We've talked about that a little bit already, right? How the goal is an objective, it's a milestone that you reach, but who must you become in order to reach that goal? And then in March, we move into obstacles, which, as I just mentioned, are one of the greatest clues to learn about yourself and to learn almost like the ladder steps that you'll need to reach in order to reach your goal, right? If you know that there are these 5 challenges that lie ahead of you and you can solve for each of those, you've now built a bridge between you and your goal. In April, we move into confidence, authority, and power. And that is where we talk about what it would be like if you were 100% confident about reaching your goal, for example, right? I think often we sell ourselves short. We don't feel 100% confident. We want that certainty, and without it, we experience self-doubt and it can hold us back. And so what we dive into in that discussion is what if, right? What is confidence? How do you become confident? And what if you could really experience that level of 100% confidence? Authority is another one. When I work with women lawyers, particularly women who are emerging leaders or leaders, sometimes you can really struggle with authority, right? Where you don't want to appear bossy, you don't want to tell people what to do, and you may doubt your authority, right, as a lawyer. And so what we want to do there is help you assume that authority, be the leader that you are. And power as well, right? I find the discussion there often is that we're unconsciously giving our power away. And what if we were to bring that home, right? If you were to feel empowered to make decisions about your career at work, with others, in relation to the execution of your work. I know that's an area where a lot of lawyers can really struggle, right? That certainty component. And so these are all areas that we work on together. And from there, we move into June, which is all about, sorry, we're not in June yet, May. May, which is where we talk about boundaries and delegation. So how to free yourself up, in a sense, how to prioritize the things that are most important to you, and to the exclusion of other things, right? Which requires that you learn to set those boundaries. And then finally, in the month of June, we move on to sustainable success. So really that's about tying together all the different concepts that we have covered, and then looking forward to the future in terms of how we're going to use those concepts in the future. And I had the privilege of meeting with my group yesterday, and we had a really amazing discussion about what everybody had learned over the course of the program. And the real shifts, I think, are an increase in confidence, increase in intentionality, really understanding steps that we can take toward our goals, and to developing the practice in alignment with what we truly want to create. There is a question in the chat about, would you recommend this while starting a new role or wait it out for 2026? My bias is to do it sooner rather than later. I think that this is really, I'm just trying to think if anybody, we had a woman last year actually who started a new role in January in-house. She was already in-house, but took on a more leadership role within the in-house position. And I think it was a really great support to be able to come to the calls and be able to talk about the experience of being in a new role. I'm also thinking on my feet, there are other lawyers who have gone through transitions, like job A to job B, while in the program as well. And so I think it's a really supportive container, and the skills that we're learning are skills that are applicable in a number of different contexts, right? Once we learn the process, it's repeatable, right? And so the other components of the program are to learn time management. So I do a session about time management because I find almost all the lawyers that I work with at some point we will have a conversation about time management and how to use your time strategically. And so I tailor the conversation to the group, right? What time management issues are most pressing? And that will be different depending on the lawyers who are in the program. And then we also do a class on transitions, because even if you're not going from job A to job B, chances are you're transitioning. So if we look at the example of going into a new role, that in itself is a transition. And so there are components of a transition that that you would go through. And so I teach a model that takes you through the different steps of going through the from here to there. And I see there's another question in the chat. So I can't seem to find the cost for the program. So the cost should be on the website. If it's not there, please let me know. It is $1,250 Canadian, and that includes the taxes. And so the cost you would see when you go to the page, which maybe I should share that in the chat actually, to everyone. So there we go. Yeah, so this link should take you to the web page that hosts the information for the course. And if there's any trouble with that, you can just reach out to me and I can help you with that. So that is the program. Some of the things that I love about having the program and leading the program is it really is an honor to be able to work. Oh, can you provide your contact information? My contact info. I'll put my email in here and you can email me and I can provide T-Price at UpLevel, all one word, UpLevel Lawyer Coaching, pardon me. T-Price at UpLevelLawyerCoaching.com. So I put my email address in the chat. So you're welcome to reach out to me and send me an email and I will provide any information you're looking for. Some lawyers like to ask their firms to sponsor them for the program. So I have materials that you could forward to your firm as part of your application. Past participants have included lawyers who are approaching partnership, who have just made partnership, who have been partners for some time and are looking to kind of reallocate the balance of their practice. I've worked with lawyers who are solos, who love having the support of being in a community with other practitioners where they can come and talk to others about what they're going through, and just grow their practice. Lawyers who are looking to create a greater online presence, lawyers who are in a kind of stuck zone where they're looking to make a transition. So going back to that question about being a new role, there was another lawyer actually in this cohort who was in a new role. And so much of our work was on role definition. So really, I think the common thread is I would encourage you to have some experience, right? When we talk about leadership, it doesn't necessarily have to be a formal title, but I do find that a certain amount of experience in practice and really being committed to the idea of achieving a goal in your practice, something that requires you to step outside of your comfort zone, where you have the benefit of working in a group with other women lawyers who are able to provide feedback. It's really interesting to see other people talk about what they're going through, their challenges, because you see you're not alone and you learn new skills and ideas from each other as well. So if you have any questions about that, please do reach out to me because I would love to answer your questions. I will keep the registration open until we reach our cap. I would invite everybody to register by the 27th. That would really be ideal. And I'll close registration when we have 8 women. I like to keep the group small so that we can have time for everybody and keep that really cohesive atmosphere. I am mindful of us reaching the end of our time together. So before we wrap up today, what I would love to do is just do a quick recap. So for each of you, we started out by talking about this breakthrough year. So 2025 will be the year that you, and I would love for you to be able to finish that sentence. You can put it in the chat if you like. I'd love to see what you are aiming for this year. We went through your year, your current year, and we talked about all the wins that you've had, the wisdom that you've gained from maybe some of the harder challenges that you've had. We've talked about what you want, right? Just generally brainstorming broadly, and then we narrowed that down, right? Three to five things that are really important. and then the one that we focused on today. And I invite you to take the same great goal framework and apply that to the other goals that you identified as some of your key goals. And then you can think about how they fit together. But you may even focus on one, right? I wholly endorse that approach. Again, going back to that essentialism model, you can go really far in one thing as opposed to trying to do too many things at once. And then we talked about the group coaching and mastermind program. So again, that starts in January. We would meet twice a month as a group. We'd have 2 individual calls. I discussed the themes that we would cover. It's also been accredited in the past in BC and Ontario for CPD credit. So that is sort of a nice addition. I expect that we will have the approval this year. I just need to submit the application, but it hasn't changed in substance. And so I expect that not to be a problem. So with that, I am going to invite questions. If anybody has anything they'd like to ask me, I am more than happy to answer your questions. It can be about your goals, anything that we covered today. I'm not seeing anything in the chat at the moment, so I will assume that means that there are not any questions. But if you have questions that come to you after today, then by all means, feel free to send me a note. And if you're watching the recording, I hope you're loving the recording. I hope that you have found this to be helpful. And I would encourage you to write to me as well if you have any questions. So there is a question in the chat. This is great. Do you recommend starting with a simple goal rather than a more complex one? So I think this depends on how comfortable you are with the process, and you can go either way. So you may have heard this in the land of time management, where some people recommend eating the frog first, right? When you sit down and start your morning, you should start with the most horrendous task first, because then it's out of your plate. You can set yourself up for the rest of the day. There's also the approach of getting a few easy wins under your belt so that you can build the momentum, so you can get your dopamine levels up and feel good about taking on the next challenge. So I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to approach this. I think if you take a simple goal, what that does is that would allow you to learn all the different skills and practice them and then achieve the goal, which will create a sense of satisfaction and confidence that you can do this formula, right? That you can take this approach, that you can set the goal, that you can take the steps necessary. My guess is that even a simple goal is going to require commitment, it's going to require time, which I think for so many lawyers in itself is a breakthrough, right? To learn how to allocate time to your project. I know for the cohort that we just had, that was a big one, right? Just putting the time in your calendar and then adhering to that time and seeing that it's possible to do that in some ways is transformative. So I think if you do a simple goal and you learn the methods and you learn how you best achieve goals, that in itself will set you up for more complex goals. Complex goals are also really great in the sense that they can really stretch you and you can completely transform as a person through setting a complex goal. And sometimes just the exercise of complex goals can require you to come up with a brand new way of thinking. So, if you're thinking about, for example, something that is so stretchy and it wouldn't be doing more of the same, you're challenged to find new ways to do things. So that in itself has value. The downside potentially, though, is that if the goal is too big and it's too daunting, then it can be off-putting and we can give up more easily. So I would actually recommend, there is a podcast episode that I have that is pretty much on that topic. It's called Great Goals versus Stretch Goals, or sorry, Smart Goals versus Stretch Goals. And Smart Goals, there's some elements. My great goal is based in part on elements from a SMART goal. It's a thing. You can Google it. SMART stands for smart, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So, and the SMART goal would be sort of more along the lines of a simple goal, and a stretch goal is that more stretchy goal. And so, if you listen to that episode, I don't have the number reference handy, but that will give you a good sense of the two goals and how each of them has pros and cons. And so for you, you just want to think about where you're at and what type of goal would feel the most appropriate for you. Any other questions? These are excellent questions. Thank you so much. You are very welcome. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. So I am mindful of the time, and thank you everybody for joining me here, and thank you for staying past the hour. I hope that you have all been set up with some really amazing goals. I hope that each of you, and feel free to share your takeaways in the chat. I hope that for each of you, you were able to come up with ideas for next year, that maybe you were able to see some of the wins that you've had this year that maybe weren't front and center. And I hope that we have instilled a desire for that breakthrough, right? To think about what for you is going to help you reach that next level, right? In the new year, right? What does that mean for you, right? It doesn't have to be flashy. Maybe nobody else is going to notice, but what would be really amazing for you so that by this time next year, you can look back and you can say, I am so glad that I took the time for myself to set out my goals, to think about what I really want because it made such a difference. So thank you, all of you. I wish you all such an amazing holiday. Thank you again for joining me this week in particular. I know that it is a busy time for everybody. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule and sharing it with me. If you have any questions, you are more than welcome to reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to have a chat as well about the program itself or about coaching in a private capacity, like one-to-one, feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you again, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your week and all best wishes over the holidays and in the new year. Bye for now.